The draft. The man standing before the lanista had, until recently, been a soldier. Now he was inventory. Rome filled its arenas through 3 reliable pipelines. Prisoners of war came first. Soldiers captured in Dacia, Judea, Germania, stripped of their weapons and handed different ones. Condemned criminals came second, men whose crimes had cost them their citizenship and earned them a death the state preferred to make entertaining. Then came the volunteers, which is the part that tends to surprise people. By the height of the imperial era, roughly half the men in the arena had chosen to be there. Debt did most of the choosing for them. Before entering the ludus, every gladiator swore the sacramentum gladiatorium, an oath to endure being burned, bound, beaten, and killed by iron. They recited it aloud. The Romans had a gift for making degradation official. The oath came with a legal consequence called infamia. Signing it stripped you of citizenship rights, placed you in the same social category as prostitutes and actors, and made you, in the eyes of Roman law, a man who had sold his body for public use. Your familia disowned you. Your name remained. Everything else was renegotiated. You were no longer a person. You were property with a sword, the ludus. The ludus magnus sat in the shadow of the Colosseum itself, connected to the arena by an underground tunnel, close enough that fighters could hear the crowd on game days. What happened inside that school confounds every assumption about how Rome treated its gladiators. Bone isotope studies conducted on gladiator remains from Ephesus revealed a diet built almost entirely around barley and legumes, high carbohydrate, deliberately fattening. The Romans called them hordearii, barley men. The fat layer served a purpose. Shallow wounds bled dramatically for the crowd without hitting anything vital. The spectacle required it. The medical care was equally counterintuitive. Galen, one of the ancient world's most significant physicians, refined much of his surgical knowledge treating gladiators at Pergamon before moving to Rome. Fighters received wound treatment, bone setting, and recovery time that most Roman citizens could not access. A trained gladiator represented a significant financial investment. The lanista's ledger demanded he survive long enough to earn it back. Accounts vary on exactly how well gladiators were treated between bouts, but what's certain is this: Rome kept you fed, kept you healthy, and kept you sharp. The city had spent too much money on you to let you die of something inconvenient. Rome needed you alive, right up until it didn't. The hypogeum. The Colosseum's hypogeum was one of the most sophisticated pieces of engineering in the ancient world. From below, it was a cage. Emperor Domitian added the subterranean network beneath the arena floor between 81 and 96 AD, a labyrinth of tunnels, holding pens, and mechanical shafts stretching the full length of the arena. 36 trapdoors cut through the wooden floor above, each connected to winch-operated elevators capable of lifting animals or fighters directly onto the sand without warning. The crowd saw the floor. They didn't see what was coming through it. Men and animals could be held in the hypogeum for hours before a bout. Fighters listened to the sounds traveling down from above, the roar of the crowd, the distant percussion of the games already underway, without being able to see any of it. The lions paced in their cages 3 feet away. Then something happened. A gate opened, a platform rose, the floor above split apart, and you were standing in daylight, blinking, with 65,000 people already screaming at you. In October 2025, archaeologists opened the Commodus Passage to the public for the first time, a private imperial tunnel running from outside the arena directly to the imperial box, used by Commodus to enter the arena as a performer without mixing with the crowd. 2,000 years later, the hypogeum is still producing new information. The floor above you wasn't an arena. It was a stage, and you were the prop, the crowd. Here's what no one tells you about the crowd. They weren't a mob. They were Romans on a public holiday, and they had opinions. The Colosseum seated between 50,000 and 80,000 people, with 65,000 as the working average. Every seat corresponded to a social rank enforced by law. The emperor occupied his box at the arena level. Senators sat in the front tier, close enough to see faces. Knights filled the rows behind them. Ordinary citizens took the middle sections. The upper tiers, the worst sight lines, the most sun, the furthest from the action, belonged to the poor, to slaves, and to women. The hierarchy of Roman society was physically inscribed into the stone. The velarium, a retractable canvas awning operated by sailors from the imperial fleet, extended over the seating to block the sun. The sand on the arena floor was there to absorb blood. The sand was replaced between bouts. The crowd held genuine power over what happened to you. When a fighter went down and signaled surrender, the editor, the man sponsoring the games, consulted the crowd's reaction before issuing the missio, the decision to spare. Whether the crowd's gestures involved thumbs or fists or simply the volume of their noise remains debated by historians. What isn't debated is that their response mattered, and that their response was based entirely on how entertaining you'd been. 80,000 people would watch you die, and by tomorrow, most wouldn't remember your name. The pairing. Days before you fought, the editor posted the program. Your name, your opponent's name, the odds. Romans bet on gladiatorial bouts the way they bet on chariot races. Seriously, with money, and with the kind of conviction that makes losing personally offensive. The matchups were not random. Rome had developed a taxonomy of gladiatorial types over centuries, and the pairings were engineered for contrast. The retiarius fought with a net and trident, mobile, long-range, lightly armored. His standard opponent was the secutor, heavily helmeted with minimal visibility, forced to chase a man who kept moving. The Myrmillo carried a large curved shield and moved like a wall. The Threx came at him with a short curved blade and a small shield, fighting in tight angular patterns. Every pairing was asymmetric by design. The crowd came to watch different styles collide, not equal forces cancel each other out. They'd been matching fighters this way for centuries, with the system refined by the time the Colosseum opened into something close to a professional sport with weight classes. A fighter named Flamma was awarded the rudis, the wooden sword symbolizing earned freedom, 4 times. He refused it 4 times and kept fighting. Ancient graffiti from Pompeii records his record. 21 wins, 9 draws, 4 defeats. He died in the arena eventually, as most did. The program was entertainment. For you, it was a death notice, with your name already printed on it. The fight between Priscus and Verus at the inaugural games of 80 AD is the only gladiatorial bout documented in enough detail to reconstruct. The poet Martial watched from the stands and wrote it down. The bout began with the pompa, a processional entrance through the arena gates, weapons inspected publicly to confirm they were real and sharp. Trumpets signaled the start. Referees called summa rudis stood on the sand with rods, authorized to pause the bout if fighters clinched or rules were broken. This was regulated combat with officials. The crowd understood the rules. The fighters understood the rules. Everyone present knew exactly what they were watching. Priscus and Verus fought for long enough that Martial recorded the crowd growing increasingly vocal in its admiration. Accounts vary on the precise sequence of the bout, but what's certain is this. Both men reached a moment of simultaneous exhaustion. Both lowered their shields at the same time, and both raised a finger to appeal to the emperor. Titus, presiding over the inaugural games, awarded both men the rudis on the spot. 2 fighters entered to satisfy a crowd that wanted death. Both walked out free. It happened exactly once in recorded history. The decision. Roman crowds had the power of life and death. They exercised it based on how entertaining you'd been. The missio, the mercy appeal, followed a specific ritual. A downed fighter dropped his weapon and raised his index finger. The editor looked to the crowd. The crowd responded. In the popular imagination, this is the moment of the thumbs down, the iconic gesture Hollywood calcified into certainty. Whether the actual signal involved a turned thumb, a closed fist, or simply the direction of the crowd's noise, remains one of the more actively debated questions in classical scholarship. The gesture called police verso appears in ancient sources, but its exact form isn't definitively established. What is established is the financial pressure running underneath every mercy decision. A trained gladiator cost the equivalent of a skilled craftsman someone's annual wages to prepare. Killing him in the arena meant writing off that investment. Editors were wealthy men staging expensive public entertainments for political reasons, and even they had accountants. The crowd wanted death often enough that fighters die, but the economics pushed towards survival more than the mythology suggests. Mortality rates for trained gladiators ran somewhere between 19 and 25% per bout in the imperial era. Not every fight was fatal. Most weren't. Your life was worth exactly as much as your last 5 minutes had been. The two outcomes. Winning was supposed to mean freedom. For most gladiators, it meant another contract. The rudis, the wooden sword, was the formal symbol of liberation, awarded to fighters who had earned their freedom through years of service or a single exceptional performance. Receiving it meant the infamia was lifted, the oath dissolved, the ledger closed. It was supposed to be the end of the story. It frequently wasn't. The men who fought as octorati had signed voluntary contracts and could re-sign them. Many did. The arena was the only context in which they had ever been famous, well-fed, and medically cared for. Outside its walls, a freed gladiator was a man with no trade, no citizenship rights worth mentioning, and a face that strangers recognized, but no one respected. Some walked back through the gate, voluntarily. For those who didn't walk out, the arena had a procedure. Attendants dressed as Charon, the ferryman of the dead, and as Mercury, guide of souls, moved onto the sand after a fallen fighter. One carried a mallet. The confirmation that a fighter was dead, not merely incapacitated, was carried out with the same theatrical efficiency that governed everything else in the arena. The show had a schedule. A beast hunter named Carpophorus reportedly dispatched 20 animals in a single afternoon's venatio. Bears, lions, a leopard, a bison. Ancient sources recorded it the way modern sports journalism records a record-breaking performance. The arena gave some men fame. It gave most men an unmarked burial outside the city walls. The legacy, gladiatorial combat, was officially banned in 399 AD under Emperor Honorius. The Colosseum is still standing. One of those facts gets more attention than the other. Here's what made the gladiatorial system's end particularly unsatisfying for anyone looking for a clean moral conclusion. It didn't end because Rome developed a conscience. It ended gradually, patchwork, under pressure from Christian emperors who objected to the spectacle on theological grounds, while the Venetianes, the animal hunts, continued for another century, finally fading around 523 AD. The building itself was repurposed as a chapel, then a cemetery, then a fortress for a medieval Roman family, then a quarry for Renaissance construction projects. The marble you don't see in the Colosseum today is in the facades of buildings across Rome. In 1749, Pope Benedict XIV consecrated the site as a Christian shrine, installing Stations of the Cross and cementing the association between the arena and early Christian martyrdom, an association that archaeology has never fully confirmed for this specific location. The Colosseum absorbed the story regardless. In October 2025, the Commodus Passage opened to the public, giving visitors access to the private imperial tunnel for the first time. Excavations continue. Animal bones, coins, and traces of arena sand keep surfacing. The site is 2,000 years old and still producing evidence. When news of gladiatorial bans reached the Roman public in 399 AD, the reaction, by historical accounts, was not relief. The games had been running for over 600 years. The reaction split between those who saw the ban as moral progress and those who saw it as the state removing something that had always been there. The emperors who staged the games have statues. The men who bled in the sand have archaeology. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones, and drop your questions about the arena in the comments.